I don't know about the rest of you, but I, for one, thought that was a very satisfying conclusion to season one of The Strain. Now, first of all, the plot of this is, they prepare for their supposed final assault against the Master. They reconned this theater that the Rockstar was in, or the Rockstar claimed that he came from, and they found that the vampires were reassembling the coffin. Okay, and they figured, well, that must be where they're mustering. So okay, we'll block off their secret passageway there by exposing the tunnel to sunlight by removing the lid of a manhole, and then we'll make our final assault. I just hit the microphone. So yeah, that's the basic plot. It's typical finale stuff. But it's at points like these where I'm kind of I'm not exactly proud of being well versed or well informed when it comes to the internet, because the internet had already, well, not just the internet. I probably would have learned this some other way too, but in this modern age where we learn news very far in advance, it's it was a little disappointing to me, because I basically knew, I was about 90% sure that the Master was not going to die in this episode, because this show has already been renewed for a season 2. Or at least I believe it was. Something somewhere tipped me off that, okay, well, this is by no means the end. And even if the show wasn't renewed for a season 2, I know for a fact that this is not the end of the story. Because there are just too many things to wrap up. They've left so many things unresolved. Up until this point, we had no idea who these mysterious vampire hunters were. These vampire hunters, who I believe are led by Stephen McHattie. It's kind of hard to tell underneath the makeup, but I think I recognized his voice. Then again, that could just be one instance where I'm mistaken, because really the only thing I know Stephen McHattie from are the Jesse Stone movies. But I digress. This I thought was a very accomplished finale. I mean, it had the action, it had the suspense, it had the sense of raised stakes, it had the emotion down. While at the same time, it did kind of end in a it did end in a cliffhanger, which, could be seen by some as a bit of a disappointment, considering how a lot of this show has just been built up thus far. And looking back on the season as a whole, I've heard some people say that this is about a 10 episode show that was stretched into 13 episodes. Now, I don't know if that is necessarily true, but I can kind of see where people are coming from who are saying that, because this show does like to take its time. It's kind of like The Bridge in that regard. It definitely takes its time. Although, to be fair, I don't think this is nearly as slow as The Bridge. I really don't. And when tackling something like this, especially vampires, when tackling a concept like this, not only are you trying to bring vampires back into the realm of seriousness, which in recent years they've really become an object of ridicule, you are doing this ambitious new medical drama where you are trying to mix supernatural concepts with real life biological concepts, and in order to really make people buy that, I think they really did have to take their time and not just kind of throw people into it. But at the same time, I can kind of imagine, I've even talked to some people who say, it did take a while to get going. I mean, I myself even said that at one point, I believe. It did kind of take a while to get going, but I think it's all the more rewarding in the end. I really do. Because this episode in particular, we can really look back on all we've seen and all we've seen these characters go through, and how much the city has changed in what the show describes as 1 week. And the question is asked, how much could change in another week, or a month, or a year? I mean, if that does not get me hooked for season 2, I don't know what will. But yeah, back to the episode itself. Like I said, I thought it was directed very well. Peter Weller did not direct this one. He directed the previous one. I'm not sure who directed this one, but I'll probably put it in the tags or something. It was pretty well acted. Even in the battle scenes, they've found a way to keep the human element at the forefront in the battle scenes. It wasn't just this Michael Bay explosion fest. Because Corey Stoll, really liking that guy. Well, not completely, but he is one of the biggest, the most valuable assets to this show in terms of performance. I mean, he's a really good actor. I'm surprised I haven't really seen him in much up to this point. Really, the only thing I saw him in before this was Nonstop. Which even then he was kind of overshadowed by Liam Neeson, but I digress again. Man, he's really good in this show. He sells the emotion, he sells the skepticism, he sells the determination, he sells the father figure. I mean, he sells all of this stuff. He sells all of these different aspects to his character, and he's actually one of the things that keeps this show grounded. This show could easily just I don't want to say devolve, but this show, if it's not careful, if it does not stay grounded, it could lose the identity that it's worked so hard to achieve up to this point, and kind of turn into this Hellboy style, almost zany self-parody, which is ironic because Guillermo del Toro worked on it. But yeah, in conjunction with him, you also have David Bradley, Mia Maestro, Kevin Durand, who is kind of goofy in this, but he's fun goofy. He's not like, oh god, it's completely taking me out of the experience goofy. He's fun goofy in that almost sardonic, almost cynical way. This grimly sardonic character. Ruta Gedmintas, I think that's how you say her name. She's a lot of fun. Richard Sammel is, again, I don't know how do you say his name, the German guy from Inglourious Basterds, or one of the German guys from Inglourious Basterds, as the Master's right-hand guy, Eichhorst. He's very good. He's I mean, he always seems to have this grin on his face, which, that's another thing that really comprises this show's identity, is this almost kooky Guillermo del Toro type humor. It almost straddles the line of hyper-reality. It almost goes into hyper-realism, but not that much. It's just a tiny step above realism, or at least it is in some cases. Not so much for Corey Stoll, but when it comes to like Kevin Durand and Richard Sammel and also Jonathan Hyde, who really got to shine this episode because he was healed. When it comes to characters like that, then yeah, it definitely edges a little bit more toward hyper reality. But again, I think that's one of the things that gives this show an identity, and also the final confrontation with the Master I thought was pretty cool. I like how they were. I like how they finally got started to get some sense of satisfaction just to have it taken away from him, and that look that is on both David Bradley's and Corey Stoll's faces as this look of heartbroken disappointment, I thought was really potent. After basically staking everything on this final assault, the Master gets away, and not only that, it's now established that he can travel in sunlight. Granted, it's not exactly a pleasant experience for him to travel in sunlight, but he can do it, which that's one issue, and I think this kind of goes back to the TV format, is that the CGI on the Master when he's climbing down the building honestly didn't look too great, or at least not compared to the practical effects that they've done thus far for the Master. And for a lot of the things, because the CGI on this show so far, at least, has been fairly restrained. I mean, really, the only time CGI has been implemented, or at least that I can see, were The only major examples of CGI are the worms, the parasites, and the tendrils that shoot out of people's throats. Those are the only glaring examples of CGI, and up to this point, it's been used pretty conservatively and has paid off. But the Master climbing down the building, that looked kind of cheesy. That CGI looked a little outdated, which again I think goes back to the TV budget and format. But it didn't really take me out of the experience. And in addition to that, we actually got a little bit of we actually got a lot of clarity on this separate branch of vampires, which if they further expand on that in the next season, in as drastically as they expanded on it in a relatively short time in this episode, I actually think we could use that to further deepen the vampire culture that these writers have established. Chuck Hogan and Guillermo del Toro have established. I mean, we could have this thing where they approach Satrakian, who I'll get to in a second, but where they approach him and say, "You didn't think all Strigoi, all vampires were painted with the broadest brush, did you?" So yeah, that has me interested. Although the fact that they pick Gus to be their human soldier who can walk around in the sunlight, I found that a little hard to swallow, because he's not exactly been reliable up to this point. He's just been kind of a loose cannon. And this actually leads me to a question. Why didn't they go to Satrakian before this point? I mean, you could argue, well, the vampires, the evil vampires, haven't really committed an act of war up to this point, or at least not in recent years. So there hasn't really been a need for a human soldier. But even then, why didn't they go to Satrakian, or why didn't they go to some other guy or why didn't they go to Kevin Durand? Why go to Gus? I just found that a little hard to believe. Maybe Satrakian has been contacted by these other vampires before, and he's just kind of separated himself from them. I don't know. Maybe we'll get some more clarity on that in season 2. But really, the thing that sealed the deal and made this episode one of the better episodes of this show so far, I don't know if it's the best. I would really have to reflect on it more. But one scene that really sealed the deal for me was the scene where they go back to the house. It's after the big battle. They go back to the house. They're licking their wounds, and they see Kelly, F's wife, and Zach's mother. She comes in, and F has to shoot her to keep her away from him and Zach. So the fact that Zach now knows is one thing. The fact that he knows that his mom has become a vampire, this soulless monster. But also, but also again, just the acting and how you could just see the pain and anguish on Corey Stoll's face, as he looks, he points his gun, and he's, oh my God, that scene was great. So yeah, overall, I thought this episode, like I said, had a lot of positive aspects going for it on a self-contained level. You know, the acting, the pacing, the plotting. I like the build up to the final battle. I like the aftermath of the battle, and a lot of the new developments I thought really set things up nicely for season 2, because for the first time, Satrakian is at a loss of what to do. There really is this feeling of aimlessness now, because what do? They've been relying up to this point on using conventional vampire killing means to kill the Master. I mean, what do you do when he can walk around in sunlight, albeit with some difficulty? How do you fight something like that? So yeah, I thought this was a really good finale. Not the best finale I've seen. It did have a few problems, namely in some of the logic, but overall, yeah, I was on the edge of my seat throughout the whole thing. Has some great character moments. Some characters got a little shortchanged, like Nora only got like one scene. But overall, yeah, I really enjoyed it, and yeah, I'm looking forward to season 2. It's hard to believe that it's going to be a year. Wow. But until then, we have a lot of the year-round TV shows to look forward to. So until The Strain comes back, I'll be waiting.